This week on BSD Now, we're going to be hearing about Allan's trip to EuroBSDCon, plus an interview about Bro on BSD. Stay tuned for your place to be, SD. BSD Now, episode 161, the BSD Bromance, recorded September 28th, 2016. Hey, I'm your host, Chris Moore.
And I'm Allan Jude.
And we're glad to have you with us this week. So that title will make sense in a little bit. Stick around for the interview. It was clever. But anyway, we're glad to have you back, Allan. You made it back safely, and I'm sure a little bit more tired from EuroBSDCon. Yes. But now you got to tell us, how did that go?
Yes, so EuroBSDCon was this past weekend, and there were lots of fun we had there. So I got in on Wednesday morning-ish, and immediately met up with a bunch of people in the lobby of the hotel where they had this interesting seating area, and we kind of took that over as the hacking lounge, and mostly did that for a couple hours, and then headed out with some people for dinner. So we walked into the old town and found a restaurant and had dinner, and it was nice. And then Thursday morning, everybody started with the Dev Summit. I stayed asleep. I was quite tired after the traveling and so on, so I didn't show up to the Dev Summit until 10:30. So I missed the first segment, but...
oh, no. You missed the best part.
Yeah, but I joined Dan Langill's ZFS benchmarking working group a little late and got caught up with that, and we had lots of interesting and useful discussion there. And then we had a very nice lunch in the restaurant at the hotel, and then we finished off the day with the Dev Summit. Then the next day, again, we have more Dev Summit. There was also a NetBSD Dev Summit on that day, so we kind of shuffled the rooms around a little bit and let them have one of the big rooms. And also during that time, people were taking the tutorials. They had both Kirk McCusick's kernel tutorial and George Neville-Neal's dtrace tutorial. There were also a couple of other tutorials on, I think one was even just using Salt, the management framework. And there was one on, I think, what else was... So yes, the other tutorials were OpenBSD building a test environment for multi-tenancy firewalls, and then a novice to advanced Salt stack on BSDs. Both of those were quite interesting to see. And then...
sorry, I'm looking at the pictures right
now. Bright and early on the Saturday morning, we actually started the conference with a very entertaining keynote from George Neville-Neal, the coming decades of BSD. So he kind of just humorously started predicting the future. When I think it pegged the year of the Linux desktop as being 2019.
Oh, okay.
And then
is that when it's finally going to happen?
Yeah, and then very quickly, BSD took over everything.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, we're gonna really need to rewrite the scheduler for that new 32,000 core system. And so on. So that was quite good. And then there were basically 3 tracks all day for all the days. There was also an interesting BOF, the Association of Computer Machinery, ACMW, the women's side of it, for Europe, had a BOF about increasing diversity in BSD projects. They had a number of interesting kind of case study scenarios, and we discussed how to approach them, and then we broke into groups, worked on those, and then presented our findings back with each other. So that was interesting, and we're hopefully going to have that as a main event at a future conference because of how well that went.
That's cool.
But yeah, there was lots of interesting talks. There was no video this year. Sadly, the first group that was supposed to do the video was the group that did it in Bulgaria, and those videos turned out very nice. But they ended up having another conference they had to go to the same weekend, and then they had a similar problem with the video group from the Chaos Communication Conference in Germany, and they couldn't make it out to do the conference either. So sadly, if you miss these talks, you'll have to wait till they're given again at another conference. But the slides and everything should be up. We'll try to get those collected and make those available as a substitute.
Great.
But yeah, I had a good time. We had a lot of good food. The social event was on the Friday instead of usually how it is on the Saturday. This was mostly because finding a restaurant where you can actually pack 200, like I think it was 170 something people in, is especially challenging.
Yeah, some places will probably just throw up their hand and say, nope, no dice.
Because even for the Dev Summit, when there was only about 40 something of us, the restaurant was like, well, we're not willing to close the restaurant and give you the entire restaurant, so you can only have this much space. Also in Serbia, it's one of the few places left where you can still smoke inside the restaurant, which was that bothered a few people, but we made do.
Yeah, say all your clothes coming back stinking.
Yes. Luckily, the hotel was completely non-smoking, so that helped. Even the restaurant, and the hotel avoided that. But yeah, we had a very good time, and a lot of good work got done. And I got us a couple of interviews, but hopefully we can maybe
intersperse.
But also we can target a couple of people at Meet BSD and make sure that they aren't able to.
We could do interviews actually at Berkeley, right? That's really cool.
Yes, it might be.
We should make a point of interviewing people who are there.
Yes,
right. This may be our only opportunity to go back to the birthplace and interview some of the originals who were there, and get that on camera. That would be really cool.
But yeah, it turns out it's actually hard to get interviews at a conference because everybody's quite busy, and you know, also we're both people, the interviewers and the interviewee, are less prepared than in our normal interview setup, but also just there's all these talks going on and people want to see them and do that stuff or talk to other people. That's why they're at the conference. And at the same time, it's like, well, I can do it at this time or this time because I'm willing to miss those talks, but you want to be at this time. Yeah. But maybe we can try to pick people we know are going to be at Meet BSD and get them and then not let them get away.
Line it up ahead of time.
A couple people that say yes and then they hide from you the entire conference.
That is true. They commit to it and they're like, "Oh crap! What did I?"
So it's like, not right now. There's a talk I want to go see, and then
yeah. We've seen that,
but we're working on it.
Well, hey, did they announce where the next one's going to be?
So the big announcement there is that EuroBSDCon 2017 will be in Paris, France. Yes,
really,
and there will be 2 people as the main organizers instead of 1. And they had decided to do this a little bit earlier, so we're hoping that the extra preparation will pay off with a bit even more of a really good conference. So yes, 2017 will be in Paris, so that gives you lots of time to plan and get that out. The date and location aren't locked in yet, but most likely I think it's the 3rd or 4th week of September 2017, one of those 2 weekends. And the goal is to have it very much in Paris rather than on the fringe of it to give us the whole experience. But I know, so the organizers are Baptiste Durson from the FreeBSD project and Antoine Jacotot from the OpenBSD project. And I know both of them have, quite a group of other committers from their project in the area as well. And that hopefully they can lean on that and give us a very strong team to pull off quite a conference.
That sounds like it'll be a good one.
And they also made a joke, hopefully it'll be better than the EuroBSDCon 2003 that was in Paris. They think they can one-up that at least and do much better than that.
Well, how many less hours of flight time is that?
For me, it means a direct flight for the first time ever. No connection.
Yeah, that could work.
Yes, that'll work for sure.
Oh, that'll be good. Okay, Allan's definitely going.
Oh, yeah. They could have it at the bottom of the ocean. I'm still going.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool. Well, hey, I'm glad you were able to come back, give us your report. Hopefully, after this week, you'll get a little more sleep and not be jet lagged and whatnot, and get ready for Meet
Yes,
BSD.
which is only like 6 weeks away. We'll mention that a little bit later in the show, but go register now because the discount only lasts until the end of September. But also check out the show notes. I have links to photos that some Olivier Robert took. He's a really nice photographer and took lots of photos of the different things. Definitely check out the photos of the decor at the restaurant we had the Dev Summit dinner at. It was the strangest things I've ever seen. It was quite an interesting place to have dinner.
Well, I am looking now.
That's the Dev Summit dinner. It's interesting. And also, check out the new BSD Now die cut stickers. So if you go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/stickers, you can see this is actually cut to the exact shape of the microphone logo. And you can put that on your laptop or whatever. And it doesn't take up as much space as the old big square one. And it doesn't have just that purple background.
Or better yet, you come to Meet BSD, for example, and get some yourself.
But if you're not able to make it, you can buy the stickers on the website there.
Very cool. Very cool. Sorry, I'm looking at the pictures. I got distracted again. But yeah, we got
a couple of those pictures are quite distracting.
Well, it's an interesting looking place, and I saw some of the pictures of around town.
But
it's like you guys
when Dan went down to the bathroom and opened the stall, and Santa Claus was sitting on the toilet, he was like, "What the hell?"
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
It's special place.
Okay.
Anyway, moving on.
You had to be there. Moving on. Okay, so next up, we don't get too many featured stories to get to talk about on NetBSD. So today we actually have one as NetBSD being deployed as a power PC. Now, of course, not power PC, as in the CPU, but a powerful PC. So
I thought it was actually power PC.
This. No, it's AMD64. Okay. I looked. Right, that was my first thought too. I was like, "What power?" Okay, no. But
there's a space between power and PC. It makes a difference.
That's right. So basically, what we have here is a little bit of a tutorial, which is going to show you how you can turn, one of your laptops, for example, into a really powerful PC. So it starts off with some of the pre-requirements you're going to need to get started, such as a NetBSD 7.01 is what's being used here, the AMD 64 version, along with some information about which wireless NIC you're going to be using. So NetBSD, of course, like the other BSDs, is going to give you a driver-based device name for network interfaces, which I'm not sure why they asked for that up front, but hey, whatever, that works. But from there, well, here actually is why they do have you handwrite your own WPA supplicant config. So they're doing that so you can fetch the NetBSD sources and convert it to the stable branch, which is interesting. Cool. It didn't say what specific features they're wanting out of the stable branch, but it is neat that they're showing you how to do that if you've never done that on NetBSD. So, of course, after doing a CVS checkout of the sources, the writer then provides us a walkthrough of doing a kernel compile and install. Interesting, though, it mentions changing the config, but then doesn't provide any example of what options were changed. So I'm not quite sure what was done there. I'm assuming maybe removing drivers that we don't need just to slim down generic. Would be my guess, but the article doesn't specifically say. So I guess at that point, use your own judgment. Yank stuff out you don't think you need. Maybe take out other network drivers, etc. But at this point, the rest of the desktop setup's actually pretty straightforward. They walk you through getting packages installed, so things like OpenBox, LX Appearance, Firefox, etc. They also mention, of course, because you might want working sound in Firefox. Well, that in turn requires Pulse audio, which in turn requires dbus. So they provide some instructions on how you would do that on NetBSD. Get that service up and running as well. But when it's all said and done, you'll end up with a shiny new NetBSD stable desktop or laptop, and your bragging rights have been achieved. So this is pretty neat. I don't see too many tutorials on how to do this on the NetBSD side, so it was good to see that show up. Okay, so next up we have some information. It looks like OpenSMTPD 6.0.0 has been released, and it is quite different. So you're going to have to tell us what they've changed.
Yeah, so they released their 6.0.0, and they say it's quite different from the former releases, but they say, unlike most of our releases, it comes with almost no new features. It turns out most of the changes are not really user visible. But looking at the changelog, the first one is rather big. They have the new fork plus reexec model. So each process has its own randomized memory space. And we'll talk about that in detail in a minute. They've improved the logging format. They have a new multi-line response a fix for the multi-line response bug in the local mail transfer protocol setup. Connection concurrency limits have been bumped, so the defaults are a bit higher now. Artificially delaying in remote sessions have been reduced. The Diffie Hellman parameters option has been removed. DHE option has been added to support auto and legacy modes for the elliptic curve compression. The SMTP engine has been simplified, and various other cosmetic changes, code cleanup, and documentation improvements. But specifically about the re-exec stuff. So the OpenSMTPD bootstrap process was quite simple before. When you executed the SMTPD, the parent process would read the configuration, build an in-memory representation of that configuration, set up a bunch of socket pairs, and then fork the child processes. The child processes would close any of the sockets they didn't need and would zero out any parts of the configuration they didn't need access to. So then each of the children would have a copy of the reduced down configuration they need and the sockets they need and would run. The problem was that if you looked at each of the different processes, they had the same memory layout. And you see the same addresses in both the parent and the child, and all the children would be the same. And they wanted to improve that because they have this new address randomization feature they've been using in OpenBSD, and it wasn't being taken advantage of because each child would have the same layout as the parent.
Sure.
So Theo suggested that OpenSMTPD could not just fork children, but instead fork them and re-execute the SMTPD binary. That way, each of the children would have its own separate randomized address space.
It's a little bit of an extra step, but
so by sense. Using he says the idea itself is neat, however, not so trivial to implement, because when we re-exec the whole binary, the inherited configuration and file descriptors doesn't work anymore. Right, because you're not copying the memory of the parent.
Yeah, you're getting a new one.
And making a copy on right version of that, you're making a whole new one. So the fork and exec, they had to figure out a way for the parent to pass back all the information and descriptors to the new post-fork instance. So the new instance that just allocates memory and decides where that information goes. So if you read the article, they kind of discuss how they pass that information forward, and the advantage is that they actually only forward the parts of the config you need instead of the whole config and having the child zero out the parts it doesn't need. So that's actually an improvement there. And then there will be a write-up about the improvements to the SMTP engine itself in a future blog post that's not been written yet. Or maybe it has because this is 2 weeks old now. But anyway, interesting to see the way they're changing their fork and exec model. While it's slightly more expensive, you get the advantage of each child has its own separately randomized address space.
Have they done this with other processes too, or is this kind of the first one they're trying it out on?
I don't know if they've done that same approach with many other daemons yet, but...
Okay. We'll keep an eye on it. Okay, nice. So next up, we have upgrading a FreeBSD 10.3 installation with ZFS on root, and then going to full disk encryption in 11.0. Interesting.
Yes. So if you had FreeBSD 10.3, where you used the installer and did the full disk encryption option, you actually had two separate ZFS pools. One for the system, and one for the boot blocks, because the boot blocks had to be unencrypted. So you'd have a boot pool that wasn't encrypted that would just contain /boot, and then your root file system, which would be on an encrypted Z pool. And that was the way it had to be done. However, after the work I did that came out early this year to allow encrypted boot from an encrypted pool, you can now transition that existing setup so that everything lives on the encrypted pool, and the only unencrypted bits you need are the 128 kilobytes or so for the boot block that does the initial bootstrapping. And so this tutorial basically walks you through it. And thanks to Joseph Mayron, who just got his .commit bit actually, for helping me work out exactly what was needed, and he tested these instructions a number of times, which resulted in him not being able to boot a number of times. And so he's debugged this quite well, so that hopefully for most people this will just be fairly straightforward, and they won't get stuck in the situation of, okay, now boot off a USB stick and then run a couple of commands to get your system to boot again, and then figure out what didn't work.
Sure.
But yeah, once you're done this process, you'll be down to just the one encrypted ZFS pool, and then you can take advantage of boot environments and everything.
Nice.
A note, do not upgrade to FreeBSD 11.0 yet. While there are some images on the FTP site, they don't contain the final version of the OpenSSL fix and are going to be re-rolled. So if you've already installed 11.0, you probably shouldn't have. There will be a different image that'll be 11.0 that'll be coming out. We're still...
There's a reason why they delay on sending the release announcement, because they're still working on stuff. So
in this particular case, we're all set to go, and then OpenSSL.
Yes, doesn't that always happen? It's just the way.
It was funny because Colin Percival was saying, back when he was security officer and stuff, it would be like OpenSSL and bind would happen right when it was time for release. Of course. And then it's like, well, we don't have to worry about bind anymore because that's a port. You guys have it so much easier. And then Paul Hennekamp jumps in and he's like, you think you guys had it hard? I had processors that couldn't divide. And then I forget what the other thing he had was, but it's like, yeah, I will admit those are much more intractable problems than just I had to re-roll the release because there was a software update. I had a processor that couldn't accurately divide a number by another number.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So currently, Gelly doesn't support key files. I'm still working on that bit. So the first step to this process is to use Gelly set key to re-encrypt the master key of Gelly without a key file. So the command looks slightly confusing because you're specifying a key file, but basically you're saying decrypt it using this key file and the old password, and then when you set it with only a new password, it ends up not having a key file anymore. I think you'd have to do minus capital K to switch it to a different key file. Anyway, so we remove the key and have just the password. But don't worry, it's not the plain text password. That password is run through the PKCS v5 key derivation function at somewhere between 100,000 and like 2 or 3 million iterations, depending on how fast your CPU is. So it'll be it'll be plenty strong. Then the other thing is Gelly boot, when we first committed it, had this problem of it picking up pools or Gelly partitions that were encrypted with a key, and it would never be able to decrypt them, and so on. So I introduced a Gelly boot flag. So there's a flag in the metadata that tells it whether it should mount it at root or at boot. This also allows you to have certain Gelly encrypted partitions where maybe you don't want to mount them at boot time. You want to prompt, bring up a basic system and then SSH in and mount that Z pool after so that you can manually enter the passphrase and doesn't block booting or whatever. So for that, we have this flag.
So some services can come up. And
so we just use Gelly configure -G to set that the Gelly boot flag on those partitions. Then what you want to do is move the boot partition or boot directory off of that separate pool. So you'll have a directory boot pool /boot, and you want to move that to just /boot. So you remove the symlink that's sitting at /boot, and then copy /boot or boot pool /boot to /, and then you'll have a regular /boot that has your kernel and your loader and all that stuff in it. Then you need to update the GPT boot code. So you want to gpart boot code and install the new GPT ZFS boot that actually has the Gelly boot code in it. Otherwise, you're not going to get very far. And then lastly, if you set the type of the old boot pool from FreeBSD-ZFS to FreeBSD-Vinum, which is just another type. Specifically, this will cause the boot blocks not to look at that unencrypted partition. Otherwise, they'll be like, oh, a ZFS partition. It's the first one. Let me boot off of it. And then you'll have not what you expected. So we hide that one instead of destroying it, because if things go bad, you can just boot off the USB stick or whatever and gpart modify that back to FreeBSD-ZFS and reboot and get back into your system and then try to solve the problem. So we don't delete that just yet in case. The other thing is you want to remove a couple of settings in your loader.conf. Specifically, there's some Gelly _partition _key settings that load those key files. You want to not do that. Otherwise, you'll decrypt the boot, the loader and the kernel, but when the kernel goes to mount the root file system, it'll try to mount it using the password and the key, and that'll be wrong because you're not using the key anymore. So you got to remove those from loader.conf. And you can also remove the geom eli passphrase prompt setting, which makes the loader ask you for the passphrase. That's mostly Chris's fault, actually. That's the one where it would prompt early so it wouldn't get lost in all the USB things. But we've already asked you for the password even earlier than that now. And if you don't remove this prompt, you'll get asked a second time. And why type the password twice if you don't have to?
Yeah. Especially if it's a long, annoying password. It gets old.
And then because of the change in the way boot environments work, you also want to set can mount equals no auto on all your existing boot environments so they don't conflict once you boot. And then you can reboot and your system should be all good. And you can exercise the loader menu and have it all good. If once you're satisfied, everything's okay, you can import the boot pool, destroy it, and delete those partitions. And the guide here even covers recreating them as extra swap space, because you might as well get that extra make some use out of that extra 2 gigs of space you got there. Because you can't really grow the ZFS partition forward. So all the instructions are there, and they've been tested on a couple of different machines. But thank you very much to Joseph for doing that work, and also Warren Block for providing his feedback on making sure that was all done the right way.
Great. Okay, well, it's time for our first sponsor this week. So we're going to be talking about DigitalOcean, of course, the website for that, digitalocean.com, where you want to go there and get signed up. Once you've created your account, though, don't forget to check out on the account section where you can apply a coupon code. And specifically, you're going to want to type in FreeBSD Now. All right, so FreeBSD Now is going to give you a $10 credit, which can be used for running, one of their medium or not quite the smallest one for a month, $10 a month, or you can run their lowest end one, which is $5 a month. I mean, that's 2 free months of playing around with a VM, and of course, backed by SSDs as well. But I think, Allan, you said they were rolling out something new you need to tell us about.
So they're looking for beta testers for FreeBSD 11.0. They're hoping to offer DigitalOcean FreeBSD 11.0 VMs like 0 days after the release, so the day of the release. And so they say, with the upcoming release of FreeBSD 11, DigitalOcean wants to support a 0-day release, meaning that we'll have images on the same day as the ISOs become available. So with that, they're looking for someone to help kick the tires and provide some feedback. If any of you are interested, you can drop a preview image into your account. Basically, you do this via the DigitalOcean API because it's not exposed in the graphical interface yet. But otherwise, all the features should be supported. If you're interested, you can send reply to this email on the FreeBSD-Cloud mailing list. Give him the email address that you're signed up with on DigitalOcean, and he'll unlock that functionality. And often they have a bug bounty credit for working on this stuff.
Nice. Yeah, great way to get involved. Kind of, give it a road test before the full thing comes out here soon. So yeah, check that out. And of course, while you're making your first DigitalOcean account, don't forget to poke around their interface. They got a lot of cool stuff. So if FreeBSD is not your thing, don't forget you can do Linux there, you can do OpenBSD, Net, etc. So they make it all super simple and powerful, and with lots of locations to choose from, you pretty much can't go wrong. But definitely try out their beta and give them some feedback so that it just makes it that much more awesome for everyone else.
Yeah. Their API is quite nice, and I wonder if I know they have a bunch of tools for it, but I wonder if how many of those are in the ports tree. Maybe if
I don't know
if you're interested in trying out the FreeBSD 11 release candidate stuff on their platform, and you have to use the API to do it, it might be just the prompting we need for somebody to port one or two of the API clients, put them in the FreeBSD ports tree.
Yep. Okay. Cool. Well, thanks, Allan, and of course, go check it out today, folks. Okay, we're joined today by Michael Shirk, who's here to talk to us about running Bro on BSD. So Michael's a BSD contributor, and we'll get to what Bro is and all that in just a moment. But first of all, welcome to the show today, Michael. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me.
Great. Well, it's first time on, so you got to do a little bit for us. You got to tell us about yourself, and specifically about your BSD journey, like what got you into BSD in the first place.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short. Pretty much been doing security work for a number of years now. My first kind of instance of FreeBSD probably was like Dan LaGille's FreeBSD diary at some point. Like I was actually supporting Linux systems, but at some point I just kind of stumbled upon FreeBSD, messing around, trying to come up with some solutions for some problems because it was very clear-cut solutions. But actually running at home, I started with an OpenBSD system. back in the days when Apache 1.3 and Bind were in the base operating system, because it made it real easy to run a website. And I ran pretty much like that for a number of years. And as some security tools were kind of working better on FreeBSD in the 7 and 8 days, running on doing like how-tos and things, I switched over to FreeBSD 8 for tools like Snorby that were starting to work pretty good, and another tool called Squeal. These are just reporting tools that sit on top of your Snort IDS for doing security monitoring. Mm-hmm. And then pretty much I stuck with FreeBSD up to about 2012, where I was then actually using FreeBSD in all aspects of what I'm doing. Anything work related. Now I do unfortunately have a Mac that I had to have for some teaching and some other things, but everything I do for my work, everything is on a FreeBSD system, actually technically hardened BSD, but I've been using FreeBSD since 2012 exclusively.
Nice.
So can you tell us about some of the things we can blame you for in BSD?
Yeah, for the most part, I've just been a kind of a stickler for the open source security tools working on OpenBSD and FreeBSD. A lot of the how-tos and things that I've done are just kind of outside, not exactly like source commits. Mm-hmm. I think something I'll talk about a little bit later, specifically with Bro and OpenBSD. I think my name might have snuck in with some patches that I had, which were just contributed by someone else. It wasn't me. I just kind of had my name kind of snuck in there. Mm-hmm. So for the most part, it's been just trying to work to push to get types of open source security tools to function on BSD operating systems, from the standpoint that I'm just tired of running Linux with these applications.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So on the professional side of your BSD career, how has that worked? Has it been, have you had any pushback, like, oh, why are you using BSD, or has it been seamless? Any hiccups to talk about?
So across the board, mainly for the business that I have, I use it. Don't have to really deal with any rebuttal, but that's the benefit of being a consultant. Mm-hmm. The issue is I really only had a couple contracts where I was able to actually do FreeBSD work. Most of it, unfortunately, is I'm helping to do some type of Linux system administration or do something a little bit better. But in one particular case, I did assist with actually using FreeBSD for a web proxy to, using a tool like Mod Security with Apache and doing a lot of customizations for support of a customer. So that's as far as professional, that was the only thing I've been able to do. Everything else has been, unfortunately, just working on Linux as a day job. Mm.
So outside of that, you mentioned that you've personally been using it since 2012. What kind of things do you use it for?
So a lot of the premise for why I got interested with running Bro and on a FreeBSD and even OpenBSD started with the fact of trying to create a build, a minimalized system that could run on a FreeBSD type box with minimal set of installation things that as a network sensor. So a box that I put on the network, and essentially it's as secure and simple as possible to read in packet data and provide analysis, and then that box essentially sending out to another type of reporting system, a Splunk. You'll hear people talk about Elk, Elastic Search with Logstash and Kibana on top of it. But a lot of it, the primary focus has been just trying to make that work so I have reproducible builds. And a lot of the stuff that I've been doing over the past year has been just, kind of the side project. Yes, it's a part of what I would like to have as a product offering, but more of it's just going through how to do these types of things with the FreeBSD type of setup.
Mm. So, of course, a big part of what we wanted to talk to you about today was Bro on BSD. So I guess first of all, because there's probably a lot of people, this is their first time hearing about it, go ahead and explain to the uninitiated, what Bro is and what it'll do for you, etc.
Sure. At this point, I think in a lot of the I don't know if we had a tutorial on the BSD Now podcast, but definitely you've talked about articles on Snort, Suricata, and from an intrusion detection system or even an intrusion prevention system standpoint, signature-based technologies that you can run on a FreeBSD or OpenBSD system. Bro is a little bit different in that instead of focusing on specific patterns that you would see on the network, Bro logs everything. First and foremost, give it an interface on some network. It takes a look at everything that it sees and logs it. Now, the next level above that is taking, okay, well, maybe this looks like an HTTP type of packet coming in on port 80. But Bro will take that type of information, process it, break it out into specific types of log files. It will track the connection. It will provide a timestamp. And it's basically doing a lot, just a plain analysis of what's going on the network. There's additional intelligence that you can build into it to also do certain alerts. So if someone was doing a scan or something that looks kind of malicious, there is some logic in Bro that will do very similar stuff to Snort and Suricata, but its power is that it's just logging everything. So even before you know something is malicious, you still have an archive or record of it that has occurred, and you can then post-process when you go back looking through the log files. It also has an interesting feature where if let's say you had a packet capture of something, and you want to see what protocol is going on, you might have a specific script or something that is contributed to you for looking for some type of malicious activity, you can take that PCAP, feed it back through, and it will produce the logs for you.
So does that mean, for example, because you're logging all traffic, you can, after a new definition does come out for your detection software, you could run it against the old captures and find out that somebody, the new OpenSSL vulnerability that just came out, we get a detection for it, and we can go and run it against all the traffic we saw last week before we were patched to see if anybody was trying to exploit it.
Yeah, and some of that depends on the SSL protocol analysis that's in Bro, as well as like the HTTP piece. So a better example is, let's say, trying to think, at least for SSL certificates. So if it's encrypted, if it was something that happens in the middle of an encrypted session,
right,
that then turns into the other discussion of how to look at encrypted traffic. So up to the point that stuff becomes encrypted, that would be the same issue with a Snort and Suricata, where you're at the limitation of only being able to see kind of the initialization of the encrypted session. But let's just say if it was some kind of packet where it sends a weird key size that caused an issue and it would be exploiting of a vulnerability. If that's captured as far as part of the SSL protocol, with all the logs from over the past couple weeks, you could go back, take a look at see if this key matches anything that you have in your log data, and process it accordingly.
Cool. So when you went to get Bro working on the different BSDs, did it just work, or did it require a lot of special work to actually make the ports compile and run on the different BSDs?
So that's kind of what will lead into the fun story. But to lead off with, it's available in the current version 2.4.1 as a pre-built package, as well as a port that you can simply install. It has a pretty much low amount of requirements, and it's pretty simple to get up and running. And that was one of the things that in the talk that we'll talk about in a couple of minutes, it was just basically anything you'd want to do on a FreeBSD sense, package, install, Bro, and it'll pull down everything for you, and you can essentially get this thing up and running in no time.
All right. Well, you got to tell us now. You've teased us. So what exactly happened, or what was involved with this interesting story?
So, and it kind of goes along with the start of our discussion, where my push is to make things work on BSD operating systems. I want security tools to run on BSD operating systems. I'm tired of that. Someone tells me that I have to run a Dockerized application running on Linux because this is what this person did over here. I just want simplicity and security built into anything that I do. So my drive has been to make something like Bro and Suricata sitting on an installation with, I've been using Hardened BSD, but FreeBSD, OpenBSD. I just want it to work. So a lot of that discussion was just focusing on trying to make things work with FreeBSD. Mm-hmm. And August of 2015, a document comes out, technically from the Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory. So even give them more background on Bro. It's been around. It was created by Vern Paxson back in, I think it's 1995, when he released the original his paper and a discussion on it. So it's something that's been used by the Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory since that time to do all of their network security monitoring. The interesting thing is they were talking about a 100 gigabit per second IDS capability. And they looked at, it's basically a white paper that documents every single piece of what they did to build this system. And a little caveat in this system is it runs on FreeBSD. they have Arista switches in place where at the point when the paper was written, that they've taken out they have a 50 gig pipe that they split out into 10 gigabit chunks that then get processed by, in the case of Bro workers, there's a way to do clusterization in the sense of Bro where you have a worker node, another piece that is just the manager that tells the other worker nodes what to do. So one of these boxes was essentially processing 10 gigabit per second with a specialized network card that made by Myricom that will split out the streams into 1 gigabit streams, where each of the FreeBSD systems would then be, or each of the FreeBSD worker nodes on each of these hosts gets processed. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of enlightening, because here's one of the most interesting things about doing network security monitoring, where FreeBSD at its core was not something that was highly publicized. So I think it was, I'm trying to think when the call for papers were for BroCon 2016, which I did a talk and attended a couple weeks ago. I kind of submitted these ideas where, is there an interest for doing high performance network security monitoring with FreeBSD systems? So they accepted the talk, and I also had kind of the nice notion where in a separate thing that I was actually doing a couple weeks before the conference, got in the OpenBSD current, so it should be in version 6.1 that will be released in 2017, that you'll finally be able to use the updated Bro port on OpenBSD. This was some work by the folks on the ports team, and it was just kind of interesting that there was so much interest from the Bro community to accept the talk and then let me talk about BSD. And a lot of that came from the fact that at the heart, at the Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory at UC Berkeley, they are doing all their monitoring of the research network with a FreeBSD setup. And sorry, give me 1 second.
No problem.
With the release coming up in the next couple of months of Bro 2.5, right now there's a beta version that's available. Because FreeBSD is so important to the Bro community, if there's any issues with 2.5 running on FreeBSD, they will not release. It is the tiered, supported operating system. If there's any issues, what have you, they will not release. So that's how important it is to the Bro community as it actually monitors their research network.
That's good. That's the kind of upstream commitment you want.
Yeah, I think that's a thing where users that aren't necessarily developers of BSD and so on can help out, is that just communicating their needs and so on to the third-party projects, like the application you're going to run on your network stack or whatever, that I use BSD and it's important and so on. Because I know the GNOME project recently, or I guess last year at BSDCon, we talked to a developer from there where they had got a FreeBSD machine set up in their continuous integration system so that they will detect when a commit they do breaks GNOME building on FreeBSD. Because before, the way it worked is they would make a commit that would accidentally break BSD. 6 months later, they released that, and a couple months later, the FreeBSD ports team would get it ported to FreeBSD, and then only 9 to 12 months after the breakage would the GNOME people find out about it. And at that time of a time frame, the developer who broke it has probably moved on and working on something different now. Whereas if they get if it's integrated into their testing systems, then they find out about it right away, and it's much more likely to get fixed and to not have this problem where, well, that one change now has 8 other changes that depend on it, and we can't just back it out and do it differently. So I think it's important that users can communicate with these external projects that BSD is important to them, and by proxy becomes important to those third-party applications.
Yeah, it was UC Berkeley as well as in the Berkeley lab. That's, I think, technically a Department of Energy grant for research. That's a lot of the researchers are out there. And I think it was the University of Indiana, another person. So essentially these two locations, the Bro 2.5, when it's released, and it should be good to go, it has to work on FreeBSD before it's released for everything. So I just thought that was a very interesting thing to be told while I was down there at the Bro conference.
Yeah, and I think it's good to see BSD presentations being given at conferences like that to keep that as being the case, so that
Keep it people's the forefront of their minds.
Yes.
Like, oh, BSD is the big thing here.
Yeah.
And we're running on.
Yeah, and to add to that, another part of this that is really deep into what I talked about was something that in the core of FreeBSD is something that will be turned on in 11, which is the NetMap framework. And a lot of the interest was not just that, hey, it's good to talk about running, on BSD operating systems, but the idea of also NetMap, making that framework something that basically across Linux and BSD, specifically FreeBSD, that you're able to make packet acquisition essentially simple. Like for myself, I would say, I probably am good up to a module perspective, but I'm really not good at kernel development. So it'd be nice just to be able to say when I set up one of these sensors that I just want to use the framework. I want to be a consumer of the data and read in what I need at a fast packet level and not have to worry about dropping packets.
Lower the bar to entry for you to getting actual meaningful work done.
Yeah,
correct.
Just providing a nice, clean interface to the network stack via NetMap.
Yep, and NetMap is an interesting thing to probably as a separate discussion. And there is some work to kind of turn that into something where, yes, it's in the heart of FreeBSD, but it needs to be updated.
Right.
There's code that's current on GitHub that needs to be brought in, and I'm trying to work to see if there's a way to make that kind of happen. I'm really pushing for that because the NetMap code and some of the applications that exist in the GitHub repository that are just amazing updates, like a load balancer, where I kind of use this other script that was provided by someone from the Berkeley lab that worked, in my case, for doing some testing. But it'd be really nice for it to be a really supported build of the NetMap framework.
Yeah.
We'll see in a couple of years, we'll interview you, and then you'll be like, well, the thing you can blame me for was that big NetMap import we did at the end of 2016 that broke everything. Right?
Yes, I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
I was warned. It's like, if you make this work, you're going to have to support it. So that's
right.
the concern.
Yeah. But, NetMap was originally designed on FreeBSD, and a lot of the work on it happened on FreeBSD, but, it still needs the maintenance going forward. And I think I can point you to a couple of people to help make that happen, I think.
Yeah, I think, I've been talking some of the folks on IRC and what would need to be done. I think it was Matt Macy, I think, was one of the people that was dancing around some of the code. And I think it was just for the driver support. So, yes, NetMap has support for Intel drivers. And a couple other drivers where there's native support, and the quick and dirty on NetMap is the ability for it to take the interface and essentially puts it into a NetMap mode where the host thinks that the interface is up, but essentially giving a userland application access directly to the ring of the packet buffer on the interface. So the most hilarious thing to do is to take your interface that you're using for management and put it into NetMap mode, because essentially no more traffic will pass through unless you actually tell it, with a program or something to actually move the traffic around. So some of that at the driver work, I know we're talking about it, but there's a lot of other new things for virtual networking, and I think PCI pass-through. There's a lot of interesting stuff in the new code, so that's, I see that as almost a brand new effort that I've created for myself.
Yeah, I think it might be interesting to see if there's applications for a kind of a mix of like SRIOV and NetMap. So on the newer 10 and 40 and 100 gigabit cards, where you can divide them into multiple virtual cards, so that you could still have part of the interface be the regular kernel networking, but the other subpart be your NetMap interface, or something like I think DPDK does, where you can, your traffic is split up into queues to be spread across CPUs, and you can have one queue that still goes into the kernel for certain ICMP traffic or whatever, or traffic addressed to the specific machine, but then all the other traffic goes through NetMap and goes through your bro or whatever, and then it goes out the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there was some interest in that specific feature for some that were familiar with PF Ring when I was down at the conference, who were interested in those features, and it's something that NetMap might be able to accomplish to provide those types of the SRVIO.
Yep. And I guess, could you tell, are your slides or a video of your talk from BroCon up?
So I'll I'm going to probably have a blog where I put up the slides that I have. I've given those to the project. I think it's going to be should be next month. They said it would take about a month, I believe, for the videos, and the slides should be available on the actual with the reference to the bro.org site. But I'll probably have a blog entry up, and I can send it into the show.
Yes,
nice.
Once I get those up.
Perfect.
That'll be coming in a future episode. There you go.
So have you been doing any other things with OpenBSD other than just the patches you got into the base system to make Bro work?
That was a lot of. It took almost a couple years for that to happen. Even with just getting the patch updated, and like everything else, it seemed to be a compelling need for someone to run the latest version of Bro 2.4, because I think it was version 1.5, was the older version of Bro that had been a couple years out. That was the last time that the port had been updated. A lot of the other things I have been trying to mess with is some firewall features, but essentially it would be the same focused if I were to do an OpenBSD type install. If I was faced with using now with the updated features for Bro, that if I had to put in a firewall for someone with the same types of functionality for network monitoring, and then having access to that log data, that would be kind of my use for OpenBSD at this point, to basically put out a box where I can run all my security tools in addition to providing a VPN and a firewall in like a small business case if I was putting something in for someone.
Okay, well, cool. Well, hey, what keeps you motivated to keep hacking on open source? I guess this is your day job, so that helps.
Actually, it's sometimes the day job that makes me do the outside of the job items, and it makes me enjoy the open source stuff. Essentially, I always attribute everything I've ever done because open source software exists. Because there's open source security tools, because I can do all these things is the reason I've made it so far. And I try to give that enthusiasm when I do teach. The one thing as a side note is with teaching some operating system classes, that I focus on just how important open source software is, especially, I always push the BSD operating systems, but that's the enthusiasm, because you can go use the things that you're learning about. You don't have to pay extra money for it. It's there. It's a learning tool, and also the history behind, the basically everything that came from Berkeley, California.
Yeah, it was at EuroBSDCon, which I just got back from. One of the talks was from Talos, Cisco's security arm, about why they do open source, and they were talking about, if we need to spin up a couple more server instances, we don't have to go and buy extra licenses to be able to do that. Or we can actually, if something's not working the way we expect it to, we can look at the code and maybe figure out why. But just the flexibility is really important, I think.
Yeah, it is something where it's usually that discussion of open versus closed source. What security do you get? Also like the BSD and GPL license, but it's just one of those things where you can see what's going on. The option's there. Not everyone's going to go through and audit every single line of code, but it's there. Someone can go through it, and that does make us all secure.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing too is just, any one of the many security consultancies and so on that uses Bro couldn't make it as good as it is, but all of them together can, right? Like, none of them could support the entire project themselves, but by kind of combining forces with the bits that's not their secret sauce or whatever, you do basically, by helping yourself, by improving Bro, you're helping everybody else, and in doing so, that's making them also contribute back, and then you end up getting more than you put into it.
And that's kind of interesting you mentioned that, because that was one of those interesting items that came up from what's coming out in with this new package utility that is being released with Bro. So Bro itself is coming out with 2.5, but what we're pushing for is people to write these packages for Bro. So just like you're talking about, I found this very interesting ransomware that hit this client. I haven't seen it anywhere else. So now I'm going to release a package that will bring down this necessary Bro scripts that will do the specific checking across your logs to look for indicators that match this. And so there's already, it's kind of that same growing of community. They would definitely want people, when they can, I know there's going to be instances where they can't share that information, but collaborate even from a security perspective, the information that they have. And I really did get the feeling, definitely from being down there, because I've been to a lot of FreeBSD, or BSDCon, BSDCan. It's been twice now I've been to BSDCan. And going to the BroCon felt that same way. A research backside of years of research and people doing academic work, in addition to a community of people that are enthusiastic about it. So that was a really good feeling.
Yeah, and I think it goes to, there are basically two types of open source. So you have the one open source where a company makes a product, open sources it, and posts the code up on their website or whatever. But all they do is post a newer version when they make one, and they don't really interact with everybody. And then you have kind of the community open source where even if it is originally from a commercial vendor or whatever, is that there's the interaction where code goes in both directions instead of only one direction. And that's, I think, what makes the big difference is that if you have code coming back in as well as the code you're making going out, that's how you can gauge the health of an open source project. So was there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Bro itself is interesting to dig into and to look at from just a network security monitoring perspective. And the fact that now in FreeBSD, of course, it works, and when the 2.5 version comes out, the port will be updated and available for users that are interested on a FreeBSD operating system. And if you're running current OpenBSD, you can just do a make install on the port and also test it out there. So,
what was the ETA on the 2.5 version, if you know?
It should be within the next couple months. Okay. I don't think they said past the end of the year. But there's a couple updates, and they've added a kind of a big thing from the 2.5 release was this SMB analyzer. Mm-hmm. So really taking a look at when you're just logging all this Windows traffic, now for looking for those types of things like, hey, is this ransomware accessing a particular network share and just writing a bunch of files. So and that was actually one of the talks too, talking about using this brand new thing that's not even released yet in beta form to check for when there's actually the chance of encrypted type of activities happening, which would be, ransomware goes out, encrypts all the files, and then holds the customer ransom until they decide to give them Bitcoins to unencrypt their files. So that's the interesting part of what's coming out in 2.5.
Yeah, cool. I definitely see where you could do interesting things with an IDS in that case, where you're watching the SMB traffic. It's like, well, if it reads the entire file and then writes a new file with the same name but with extra letters at the end, and it's, within rounded up to the nearest block size, the same size, then that's probably that file being ransomware. If you see that a bunch of times in a row, then, raise the red flag.
And the other interesting thing that is this functionality has been there for taking action. In the larger instances, when I was talking about the Berkeley labs, they'll make a decision with additional Bro scripts. So, of course, it's a C program, C++, but the scripting language is a kind of a Bro language in and of itself that you can write additional checks on top of it. So if you have a threat intelligence and indicators, this is one of the primary uses I have for it. You check to see if these IP match. If you see these IPs match, then fire off a process to put it in the firewall rule or send out to a specific router to not even pass that traffic anywhere near the network. So there's a refinement now with this net control framework, which will allow you to kind of have a process that manages all those for you for talking to these specific network devices that support it. So that was another interesting 2.5 mention I want to get out there. So it's not exactly IPS, but when you are watching the entire network and you see something that is bad and you wish to take action, that functionality is there for you to take care of it.
Yep. Cool. Was there anything else you think that you'd like to see from the BSD projects to make this type of work easier, other than, say, updating NetMap?
Yeah, I think NetMap would be a win. Part of my talk, and you'll see on my slides, is one rant slide, because this was me giving a talk about how awesome mostly FreeBSD that I use. I had a slide on Beehive, jails, and ZFS, and how I use that every single day for everything that I do. One of those was just the discussion of that no one likes systemd I had like the line count for init.c currently in FreeBSD is like 1,989 lines, and System D is at least over 500,000 lines of code at this point, probably even more. That there would be a push. I've talked to people; they would love to run a BSD system for their security devices, but until a lot of this, getting stuff like NetMap is the win. I think for making it so I could take any commodity system reasonably, with generally available network cards, to make it so this could be something someone runs at their business. Linux and PF-Ring, I see as the issue with, you could basically use it on any type of, crap Broadcom card that everyone always complains about. But that setup works. Something like NetMap doesn't work that well. So I think that's primarily it. Just I see it as a win to get people to start using BSD operating systems for their security.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, we appreciate you being with us today, Michael, and taking the time.
Thank you guys for having me.
Great. We'll be back to the rest of the show in just a moment. Okay, we're going to head to the news roundup, but really quick before we get to that, we're going to go ahead and mention our next sponsor this week, which is going to be IX Systems. Of course, the website for that, ixsystems.com/BSDNow, where you want to go get in touch with those folks and let them just build whatever it is you need. I mean, we're talking, the crazy system you guys have been drooling over for a while, all the way down to little FreeNAS minis and everything in between. I don't know if you've seen their IX rack solution as well. Yes. So if you basically want a rack filled with all kinds of different gear, I mean, pick and choose and basically make your own cloud, essentially. That's what it boils down to. They can do that too. Of course, IX has done some crazy stuff recently.
The problem with the cloud is that it's on the other side of the internet, and your pipe to the internet is only this big, whereas your pipe to the LAN is this big. It's like,
and the total cost of ownership, once you start getting into the 5-figure, 6-figure a month range, I mean, it kind of sucks.
It's like you can lease a whole rack of gear from IX for less money per month, and you have more gear this way, and nobody else is using it and slowing it down, and you have 40 gigabits between the machines in your rack and say 10 gigabits to your workstations or whatever, and it's like, well, suddenly the cloud is more useful now that it's not at the other end of a shoestring.
Let me grab a piece of that cloud and just put it right here in the office. That makes sense. So anyway, you want to get in touch with those folks, of course, and let them build an X system, of course, the latest and greatest Intel processors. So if you need a specific revision of some particular type of chip, but you need a certain processor, let them know. They'll, of course, do their best to find that for you. But we also wanted to mention IX is a pretty good corporate citizen when it comes to helping around the BSD community. And speaking of that, they're actually getting ready to host a Meet BSD here in November. So we wanted to mention the website for that, which was meetbsd.com. And you want to go there and start getting signed up right away just so they can start getting a head count of who's coming. And it's going to be held at Berkeley University, which, I mean, come on, if you're any kind of BSD nerd, you have to go to that. If at all possible, you could make it out. That's just one you don't want to miss. So I will be there. Allan will be there. And we'll look forward to seeing you two out there. I know. Are you giving a talk, Allan?
I'm a backup speaker. I'm hoping not to have to give one, but if somebody can't make it, I can.
So if I cancel my talk, you can. Okay. No, I got to give a talk. I'm going to do a TrueOS, kind of our unveiling of all the stuff we've been working on the last year. So that'll be fun. But sounds like there's going to be a lot of good speakers there, and of course the unconference stuff's always a hoot. So you need to come on out for Meet BSD and start making your plans accordingly.
Yeah. Also, I know the social event will be hosted at Kirk's favorite venue. So I know that'll be pretty good, and apparently it's just down the hill up the hill from his house, so he plans to just roll home.
Oh, hey, that works. That makes it easy.
Yeah. But yes, if you register before the end of September, $30 off the registration. And yes, so far the confirmed speakers are Krista Asanovic, who's a professor at Berkeley, some guy named Chris Moore, who does some operating systems. Rod Grimes.
I don't want to hear that one.
Rod Grimes, one of the original founders of FreeBSD and current member of the release engineering team. Jordan Hubbard, another one of the founding members of BSD. Michael Dexter. Also, Matt Ahrens will be there and speaking. Okay. So that'll be awesome. Devin Teskey will also be giving a talk. And we're going to have a great time. So
it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, looking forward to it. It's going to be an exciting year. I'm a little nervous speaking at Berkeley. This is going to be fun.
And I think I talked at least 3 or 4 people at EuroBSDCon into making plans to come to meet BSD.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, me and Allan will both be there, and we got little cool stickers to hand out now. And you just need to show up. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Okay, well, let's get into the news roundup here. So first up, we have something new, a kind of neat, exciting new project that showed up online called CloneOS, which bills itself as a free, open-source, FreeBSD-based platform for virtual environment creation and management, which that's kind of a mouthful, but basically what it looks like to be is kind of an impressive list of technologies under the hood. So things like beehives and jails, and of course, CBSD and Puppet is being used for management tasks. Which that sounds pretty cool, kind of a JLVM system.
It apparently has Valley, the NetBSD virtual switching system. The NetMap virtual switching system.
Yeah, that's neat stuff. But it looks like it's still really early days, so it looks like early beta is available. But they have already a pretty neat list of features here, including, of course, ZFS support, VM cloning, export-import, Ethernet soft switch for separated networking.
Yep, but high speed
supports
because
jails.
it's NetMap, not jails.
Yep. Jails for lightweight containers. Of course, it does VMC terminals for VMware or VM containers, so like Beehive. Templates available as well. Makes it easy to deploy stuff. Has configuration management helpers. And the last one, actually multi-node operation, kind of has me intrigued. I'm curious to see what that means. Like, how does that work? But anyway, it looks really promising, and right now it's under heavy development. Again, brand new stuff. But I've actually already reached out to the developer just to see if they wanted to come on the show and give us an interview at some point. Just kind of, yes, please. I'm curious. I'd like to see what's going on there. And they mentioned kind of being an alternative to some of the Linux-based platforms, which are similar as well. What was the list of things he compared it to? OpenStack, OpenNebula, Amazon AWS. So could be neat. We'll have to give it a whirl, see what it looks like. But anyway, we'll keep an eye on it for you, and if we can ever score an interview, that would be great too. Okay, so next up, BSD Magazine recently did an interview with FreeBSD developer, how do you pronounce that? Alexander Rybalko? I'm sorry, I butchered your name. I'm horrible at that. But Alexander lives over in the Ukraine. And while you may not have heard of him, he's actually worked on some really cool projects for FreeBSD, including the new VT console driver, which if you're running on 11 something or later 10s, you're probably already using it. So definitely good stuff there. And of course, a lot of work on ARMS and MIPS support. But specifically, this interview covers some of the work he's done actually to get the Raspberry Pi support working with FreeBSD. He talks a little bit about what some of his side of that was. He says, I think my main help here was getting the USB OTG driver, which I wrote before any other device, or before for another device, the Rawlink RT3052, and then ported it over the Raspberry Pi. He said, but it was rewritten by Hans-Peter Selesky, who we've interviewed as well. He said, I do not know so much about his USB as Hans knows, though, which Hans is the expert there. He said another useful part of his help was getting Xorg support working. He said, I did a simple Xorg video driver which uses frame buffer exported by the virtual terminal subsystem. This is helpful to many guys to start using the RPI as a simple desktop system. He was also asked the question, though, why would FreeBSD be a good fit for ARM? He said, first of all, FreeBSD is very powerful as a network server, all modern network features in one box with very fast processing. Another good side of FreeBSD is the modularity. It's not required to write code to use some driver that was already written for another system. You can just define it in configuration files such as kernel config, kernel hints, FTT. So if you want to build a nice Raspberry Pi-based home server, use FreeBSD. If you want to play with devices attached to the RPI's GPIO, you can use FreeBSD. So definitely some good points there. He also discussed a little bit of his work on the the Z router project, not ZFS. I automatically want to say that when I see the capital Z, right? Force a habit. But the Z router project, which is actually a really lightweight platform for tiny routers and embedded devices.
Yes,
but before
I heard about that project as far back as EuroBSDCon 2012, where he was talking about running it on some D-Link off-the-shelf routers.
That's right. But before the interview wraps up here, they do mention the Raspberry Pi again, specifically asking how interested individuals can get involved. And he points them over to the wiki.freebsd.org site as being kind of a great reference point for those interested in getting started with FreeBSD embedded. Plus, he said the warm community is also a plus. So definitely some good praise there. And it's neat to see more and more folks starting to work on embedded and ARM. I actually just ordered a bunch of Raspberry Pis here the other day. We have we're going to mess around with those. It looks like fun. So definitely great little boxes. Okay, so next up, trying out the FreeBSD powered TrueOS. So the folks over at Phoronix have done a kind of an early look at the new TrueOS desktop images, given some of their thoughts. So first up, though, I think it was Michael who did the art story. He gives props to the installer, noting that the TrueOS desktop installer is basically the same as from the PCBSD days, just been rebranded. Still one of the easiest BSD graphical installers I've ever dealt with, and it makes it a breeze for setting up FreeBSD on ZFS system by default.
Yeah, the big thing for me, though, was being able to install as a new boot environment on my existing install.
That's right. A lot of people are liking that
Yeah.
option. I've actually been surprised how many people have used that.
Well, it's like I want to upgrade my existing machine, but I don't want to necessarily blow it away. But I want the new one to be completely fresh. I don't want mixed stuff from the old thing.
Correct. That was always my gripe. Like I was always kind of skittish doing like a traditional upgrade where it's trying to merge files in. You end up with this kind of halfway mix where it's not really fresh and you don't know what it did, right? And then you end up picking things apart after the fact. Like, well, wait a minute, that comp file's from that. I want a fresh install, but I don't want to lose my crap.
Yeah, well,
right? And I don't have to do a restore.
You think that's bad? My laptop had been, I think, originally installed as PCBSD 9.3. And had basically over the years had head compiled and installed over top of that multiple times.
It was a Franken BSD.
And yeah, so it was all the way up to like 11 from I guess the last update would have been from BSDCon-ish time. And it was, all kinds of Frankenstein stuff all over the place. Because it originally was 9.3, it still had like the dig binary compiled for 9.3.
Oh,
but
nice.
Because I never did make delete old when I did the source updates. So it still had stuff from 9.x that still worked, but on newer stuff, and then packages all over the place. And it was, flip-flopping back and forth between different package repos and stuff and all this craziness. And then I can still boot into that craziness if something stopped working in the new one. But I have this nice, pristine new 12, and I just boot it from the boot environment menu, and it's all clean.
It just works. Yeah, like when I did mine, I upgraded from 10.3 right to the TrueOS 12, and it was like, I just had to copy a couple things out of Etsy that I had saved, like some OpenVPN stuff, and it just worked. It was quite nice. So, I'm glad people are enjoying that feature. But back at the article here, though, it looks like he took it for a little bit of a minimal spin, and he said things mostly seem to be working. He mentioned some of the default apps, though, such as Cupzilla and Trojita aren't his favorite, but actually we're changing those, so no worries. I think Firefox and Thunderbird are coming back as the defaults. We tried it. Cupzilla is just not quite there. But he mentions Lumina's come quite a ways for 1.0, but he still has a few rough edges, which, it's a 1.0. You'll see those things.
Yeah, mostly
out as time goes
it didn't look like there were much in the way of settings to change things. I thought there were more.
Yeah. No, there are. You right-click on the desktop and you go to desktop settings, and then there's like a little control panel that lets you change stuff. So
yeah, I guess I went to the start menu thing and looked for control panel and found like 3 buttons, and I was like, that doesn't look right.
You know what? Oh, yeah. The control panel actually brings up sysadm. Yes. You have to go to preferences and then configure desktop. Yeah. So it's like kind of hidden under another click, right? But there is definitely like a whole appearance menu and session options.
I'll have to play with that.
Interface config,
I was getting confused. It was going semi-transparent more frequently than I would like, I think.
Oh, yeah, that's like the new Compton compositor. Yeah. So I don't like that either. I think we changed the defaults back to not being transparent because that annoyed me because I have 2 screens, right? And I like to have 2 things open and only one's active, but I don't want the other one to be transparent. So, anywho. But hey, that's why it's kind of early days and we're still fiddling around and kind of sanding off the rough edges here. But anyway, I'm glad to see he took some time to take a peek at it. And he mentions at the end of the article that he was going to do a more full BSD roundup to kind of see the state of installation of all of them, which actually happened while I think you were gone at Euro, Allan. So we have that next. Specifically, it looks like Phoronix goes ahead and tries out TrueOS again, which of course no major changes there. He said just easy install and done. But from there he tries out Dragonfly BSD, and which he mentions the installer isn't quite as easy, but it's still one of his favorite BSDs, working with pretty much all the hardware they've thrown at it. So that's definitely good stuff. Next, he mentions Ghost BSD, which also has an easy-to-use graphical installer similar to the TrueOS installer, which is funny. It's actually using the same install backend, just different client on the front. He said it made it really quick to get it loaded and up to the Mate desktop, so that's good stuff. And he also tried a vanilla FreeBSD 11.0 RC2, I think is what they were running here. he mentions, of course, it was easy to get installed, and once it was done, then he could use package to easily get to the setup he was looking for. But if you click over to page 2, we actually get to the naughty list of BSDs he was having some trouble with, which doesn't mean it's broken for everyone, just he had some particular issues. But he said first up was OpenBSD, which he tried the new 6.0. He said after installation and first boot, the display kept disappearing, I guess going blank, before he could get any IP information from the system to try SSHing in. So I guess maybe a display driver error. I'm not sure. Do they have like a KMS?
I think
it
sounds like it was loading KMS after a certain point, and then he was getting a blank screen.
Right, and then it disappears. So, yeah, definitely an issue. I'd definitely report that to those guys. Maybe they can figure out what card you have and what's wrong. He just said he tried NetBSD 7 up next, but the installer couldn't get past a root device prompt, which most likely sounds like trouble finding the install media. He said he had the same story with Midnight BSD as well. So I don't know what type of installation medium it was on, if it was USB or DVD or whatever.
Yeah,
but
for USBs, sometimes the device shows up a little bit too late. And, in the FreeBSD one, you just press dot and wait, or there's a setting you can set to make it wait longer.
We changed the setting on ours, so I think it waits up to 60 seconds, and if it doesn't show up at that point, then we'll bail out. Yep. But we had the same problem a couple years ago. He said he also tested PackBSD, which is formerly ArchBSD. He said he did manage to get installed, but not without some major fighting with the installation process. But he said after the installation, he ran into some issues getting packages up and running. He mentions it may have been bad timing, though, due to them moving to a new server for packages at the time, so those things may be resolved already. But it was interesting to see, kind of just a quick roundup of the state of things on their particular hardware. So hopefully some of the issues they had gets resolved. Okay, well, actually, this next one I thought was really cool here. Finally, more people ditching Grub. That makes me happy. But anyway, Allan, tell us what's going on here.
Yes, so this one, Illumos has imported a modified FreeBSD bootloader to replace Grub 0.97 that they've been using for, I think, since Illumos started quite a few years ago. This is work by Thomas Soom, who basically started working on porting the FreeBSD bootloader over to Illumos, and during that saw my work to add the ZFS boot environment menu to FreeBSD, and he was like, we need the same thing in Illumos. And so him and I started working together, and he contributed back quite a few fixes and improvements and suggestions as I wrote the code for our side. He says, his work has also resulted in a number of commits to FreeBSD and code sharing going back and forth in both directions, which is what we really like to see. But yes, now it's officially available in Illumos, in the Illumos-Gate repository, which is the upstream of all the different Illumos distributions. Sure. So Tumas helped me a lot with building the ZFS boot environment menu listing option, even though the way FreeBSD does it is different than the way he did it in Illumos. But he still helped me out with the fourth and so on for it, along with Devin Teskey. And it meant that, so in FreeBSD, we have code in the loader that actually interrogates the disk and gets the live list of boot environments that it finds. Whereas in Illumos, they still do it kind of the grub way, where you have this configuration file that has a list of them. So while they still do the list thing and their code is different, it's, he was still willing to help me with the FreeBSD side of it as well.
Sure.
But he also did a bunch of work to improve the MS-DOS-FS support in the loader, because on Illumos, they load a giant archive from like a FAT32 partition, and it's like a...
Kind of the EFI thing.
Well, kind of, except for this is not EFI booting. It's
sure.
They read from this MS-DOS partition, which I think sometimes is on a USB stick in their storage things. But it's basically a giant RAM disk archive that they then load, and it has all the other stuff in it. So his improvements to that, but then he improved the block cache, because it turns out reading a 128 megabyte file without read ahead is really slow.
Just a little.
Yeah. So he improved the block cache, and that got committed into FreeBSD, and that's why now booting over IPMI off a virtual CD on a machine in Portland from my house now takes like 3 minutes instead of 15 minutes. And so thank you. But yes, this work means that Illumos can now boot from RAID Z, where their old Grub couldn't. You had to have basically a separate pool, maybe a mirror of 2 SSDs or something, to actually boot your operating system off of, and then you had your separate storage pool. But you can actually boot from RAID Z now, and as well, if the work that Tumis has done in FreeBSD is any indication, that they'll have support for basically all zpool features. He's actually in FreeBSD head now. You can boot even if it uses the Skyne hashing algorithm or gzip. I think gzip is implemented. I'm pretty sure it is. If not, it's on the to-do list. So basically, before your root partition had to have most of the fancy features turned off to be able to boot, but now it supports large blocks, Skyne hashing, and I think it will support gzip. I'm not sure if gzip is done yet or not, but it basically means no matter what settings you use on your boot data set, it'll still work because the loader knows how to do all those things now, which is great. It also this work also sets Lumos on a path to eventually have EFI boot. They still don't yet, but they basically will be able to.
Get there.
I know Thomas has been working on that stuff. He showed me a fancy. So he built it so that using one engine, it can do serial, regular like text mode VGA for BIOS booting and EFI fancy booting, all off one code base. So hopefully he gets to finish that, and that ends up going into both operating systems. He says it's good to see this work happening, FreeBSD technology being reused elsewhere, but also the improvements made to FreeBSD's bootloader for Lumos coming back into FreeBSD, so that we
can. It's neat to see, We take ZFS, you get our bootloader. It's all good, right?
But the other interesting thing is often the fixes are landing in FreeBSD first because it just makes it easier to pull them in to a Lumos from upstream rather than patching them into Lumos, then trying to merge that back up into FreeBSD and then sync it back down into a Lumos. And hopefully Tumis is only the first of many Lumos contributors that end up with FreeBSD commit bits as well. I guess technically Matt Ahrens was the first, but Tumis is definitely...
We need more.
More is better.
We'll take more. That's right.
If you check out the mailing list post, especially if you're an Lumos user, it talks about how to convert an existing system, basically using their badmin utility. When you activate it, it will write it'll make sure it has the right bootloader stuff and update the config file. It talks about how to recover if you end up booting from a boot environment that's older and doesn't have the new bootloader. And it also has information on how you can opt to remain on Grub for a little bit longer. Especially, for example, if you maintain a downstream distribution and you want to do a new release but don't want to change the bootloader out from underneath people just yet. However, they note that they're hoping to have Grub 0.97 completely removed from the repository within a year, so don't expect to stay on it forever.
Good deal.
But glad to see that actually got committed recently, and looking forward to even more work with Tumis.
Okay, it's Tarsnap time, folks. So, of course, we got to remind you of the website, tarsnap.com/BSDNow, where you want to go today, create an account, start doing your encrypted backups properly and securely. If you're going to back up to the cloud, you don't know who has access to those bits. I mean, things get backed up, copies get made, it ends up all over the place, right? What if you want to delete things? Well, that's pretty much impossible. So, Tarsnap makes it safe to do by encrypting everything, and only you have access to the key. And because you have access, that means you could literally just RMRF the key, shred it, delete it, whatever you need to do to get rid of it. And all those bits are now rendered meaningless unless somebody's going to find some way to get your key, which is rather difficult.
Yes, I found it amusing. Brooks Davis actually was talking about his use of Tarsnap and how he actually had to recover his key from his printed out copy. And luckily, when Colin made the system that lets you print out the key on a piece of paper that you can store in a safety deposit box or something, the last character on each of the rows of giant numbers of random letters is a checksum, so that you can tell which row you made the typo in, rather than just, you entered this key, it is wrong. Sorry. It can basically detect when you accidentally, type an 8 instead of a 9 or something and tell you, what you actually typed in row 8 is not the checksum doesn't match, so that row you've made a typo. Obviously it can't tell if your key is right or not until it tries to decrypt your data and sees if it actually comes up with the right data. But
speaking of which, hard copy is a good idea.
Yes.
You should print that out. So I laminated mine. Even I laminated it so it would last over the years, and then put it in a safe place, and there you go. So you have a backup copy.
Because if you lose that key, on purpose or not, there's no way to get the data back. Your data is gone
That's right.
forever. So yeah, copies of back up the key on paper,
That's right.
probably
You need to
more
back
than
up
one
for the-
piece of
for the
paper.
key. That's right. But no, definitely good stuff. So if you're not backing up with TarSnap, you're not doing it right. You should start doing that right away. And of course, if you talk to anyone over at TarSnap, tell them you heard about it here on BSD Now. Okay, so BSD bits. First up, we got a demo of booting CentOS and Windows 10 and FreeBSD Beehive through VNC Headless, which it's a YouTube video. So, of course, you'll have to go click on that at a later point and watch that. Some neat stuff. More and more people are starting to do this now. Beehive's getting pretty good. So definitely cool. Next up, we have a link from Michael W. Lucas, kind of a blog post here talking about this year's anemic output, which, have you read that yet, Allan?
In particular, he describes why he will not make it to meet BSD, even though he really would like to. On top of the fact that he doesn't like to
blame
fly.
it on the anemia. You didn't want to fly.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Yes. Michael Lucas really, really does not like airplanes.
I don't blame you.
But yes, he says, last year he had written 400,000 words in total, and this year has been a lot less. And he found out that it is a medical condition, and that we wish him to get well soon, and hopefully he can get this sorted out and get back to being his normal self.
Usual productive self. Good stuff. But if you would like, his latest ebook now, Pam Mastery, is actually out. So we have a link to that over on the website as well. You should definitely go pick up a copy of that. Another good book in the series of Michael W. Lucas books. Let's see. So to round up the BSD bits, we have another YouTube video of how to install OpenBSD 6.0 plus XFCE desktop, and of course some basic applications up on YouTube as well. So is that what kids do these days? You watch YouTube videos, and that's kind of your tutorial thing.
It really is. And
right.
I guess what are we doing, right? We're putting
I
this
guess
content
that's
on
what
YouTube.
we do too. It's just I'm on the other side.
Yes, when I read tutorials, I want we make a YouTube video pointing you to a bunch of old-fashioned tutorials on on websites. Maybe we're doing it wrong. I don't know.
Oh, the irony.
Anyway, well, it turns out
stuff.
video tutorials are really hard. That's why we don't do them anymore.
They are. Well, there's a lot of time spent on the production.
Well, yes.
You just write it. You can write
yes.
it.
If I make a mistake when I'm writing it, I edit it and then it's posted. Whereas if I made a mistake in like minute 8 of a video tutorial is either, oops, sorry, don't do it that way. Or
doing the FreeNAS Mini XL unboxing video, for example, I had to set that up. That took hours just to get a little 12-minute, 15-minute video clip, like getting that all prepared, cleaning the room, getting it perfect, the lighting.
Well,
that was
I think some of the SSH or the OpenBSD tutorials, I threw away like 8 versions of it before I got one that I was happy with.
Oh man, yeah.
They're hard.
That's a lot of work, folks.
Yes. So
Anyway,
go watch and
here.
hit like on the ones that you like, because a lot of work goes into those.
That's right. Okay, well, let's get into some feedback and questions. You've been gone a couple weeks. Let's see what we got in the email bag here. So first up, it looks like Peter. It's talking about LibreBoot with full disk encryption. He said, "Hi, I see that you linked my mail at LibreBoot," where he's talking about OpenBSD 5.9 LibreBoot using a ThinkPad X200. And he said, "I'm actually using it with full disk encryption now. I use it daily without any issues." But he gives us a couple notes, though. He said, "However, to use encryption on Slash, you need to use pure CBIOS and remove grub." He said you need to remove files image grub2 and etc show boot menu and boot order from the LibreBoot image. And then you'll also need to put option ROMs in to have video on CBIOS. He said, note this only works using text images. He said if you use Visa images, you're still left with the KFreeBSD, KOpenBSD, KNetBSD ways to boot.
Using grub.
Oh, that's good.
So he basically answers our question about do you have to use grub. It's like if you want just text mode, then you can get the option ROM for CBIOS and do that. Or if you want Visa, you're going to have to use grub. But yes, thank you for that extra information. I always like it when the people whose things we talk about actually give us more information, answer the questions we had about it.
Okay.
Yes, okay. The next one's from Allan, spelled slightly differently. He says, I have an HP Complex 6005 PC that comes with a AMD Phenom B55 processor, and he's trying to install PCBSD and FreeBSD on it. Unfortunately, it just reboots. I've tried burning a DVD, and he's tried a USB stick. I know the media is good because it boots just fine in all his other systems. I would say that it just isn't supported, except for the fact that FreeNAS I was running on it for nearly 2 years before he tried to install PZBSD, so it doesn't seem to be that. He said, I would like to start working on BSD more, but it's currently my only spare system. Do you have any idea why FreeNAS would boot and FreeBSD would not? I'm guessing maybe just some change between 9.x and the newer stuff.
Well, FreeNAS for a long time was 9.3, right? So I mean, he doesn't say what versions of FreeBSD or PCBSD tried. It could have been right? The current stuff. It could have been 11, I don't know. And then 9.3, who knows? But yeah, I would look at the version numbers, because if it's an old FreeNAS, that makes sense. Maybe something was unsupported or isn't supported since then, or is broken. That. It would just,
there'd probably be a bug in the boot process at some point, I suppose.
Yeah. I guess it would be helpful to know where it reboots. Does the kernel actually start loading and then you see a panic and it reboots? Does it get to the point of mounting the disk? Like what's going on with it?
It kind of reminds me of Bernard Spills has an HP laptop that just dies like super, super early in the boot. I wonder if it's the same thing.
I don't know. I wonder what but anyway, more details might be helpful. And if you can provide those details, maybe open a FreeBSD bug on it too, because I imagine the same thing applies with FreeBSD and PCBSD. It's just, again, FreeNAS is a little more conservative and pulls stuff in a slower rate. So it might be they haven't pulled in the bad code yet.
In particular, if you open a bug, I can probably make a couple images for you to try things on and see if it goes any better.
Okay. Cool. Let's move on here. So Eduardo writes in. He said, hi, Chris and Allan. I really enjoyed the interview with Drew Gurkowski on episode 156. It's vital for our BSD community to see things through a beginner's eyes if we want to encourage new users to try the various BSDs. I look forward to more interviews about new users, user experience, and improvements to all the BSD's documentation. Thanks, Eduardo. Yeah, we should do that, Allan. We should have more of a kind of a, maybe make that a semi-frequent thing where a new user tries out BSD for the first time. What sucks, what doesn't, what works,
where
what
are the
doesn't.
hiccups in the documentation, where it assumes you know something and it takes you an hour to figure it out before you can keep going.
But somebody with the tribal knowledge would have just known. It was really amazing how quickly I went from being able to have somewhat the new user perspective to just not anymore. I know where too many of the secret hubs are and stuff now, and I don't even think about it when I use them. I'm just like, let me drop to the command line, done. Okay. Anyway. Okay, next up, you want to do Greg?
So Greg has a question about ZFS and ACLs. He says, BSD Now is a great topic and he loves the show. I know you guys always looking for new questions. I have one and I don't think you guys talked about yet. My question is about ZFS ACLs, or ACL mode, ACL inherit ZFS properties. Can you, he says collaborate, but I think he means explain it a little bit.
Maybe elaborate on it more, Autocorrect.
Asks how this ACL works with Samba servers and compared to Windows permissions. So ZFS uses NFS v4 style ACLs, and yes, they're basically similar to how Windows permissions work. It allows you to have multiple users that have access to a file and so on. With the typical Unix user group other permissions, you're relatively constrained in what you can do. In particular, you can have two users that own a file. With ACLs, you can. And you can also do things like, I need the backup user to be able to read everybody's files, but I want, everybody else to not be able to read everybody's files. So you can use ACLs that way. So the ACL mode has a couple of possible settings. I'm going to look it up here. Don't know. So ACL mode can be discard, which means it ignores them. Group mask, which means it allows mask them with your group permissions. Pass through, which just works as normal, and then restricted, which means you can have some control over what they actually do. And then the inherit basically determines, does this data set inherit permissions from the parent data set? So they can be discard, meaning only apply the permissions that are on this particular data set rather than inheriting the ones from the parent. No allow, meaning that you don't add the allows or whatever. Restricted, and pass through X. The man page for the ZFS command should have more detail on that. It would be a good area to increase the documentation in BSD on that particular thing. I think FreeNAS has some relatively useful documentation on that because using ZFS NFS ACLs with Samba is really in the FreeNAS wheelhouse for sure.
Sure.
So yes, I would like to see the improvements to that in general.
Okay. Cool. Let's see here. So next up we have a Brian who writes in. It says, hey guys, I'm one of those old Linux Action Show converts who's been trying to learn FreeBSD. I've installed FreeNAS and PCBSD a few times on an old XP desktop and laptop at work, but the damn things refuse to break so I can work on them. Interesting. Bad, I guess good problem to have. He said, so I figured it was the time to get TrueOS on a nice laptop. He said, but with hardware compatibility accelerating the way it is now, I'm not able to find real data on laptops that are supported. So I figured I'd just be nosy and ask you guys what laptops you use, what currently works and what doesn't work with them, and what tweaks, if any, you had to make to get them working. I heard you guys say that laptop manufacturers swap out parts without changing model numbers, which is true. So he's like, I know that I'm gambling no matter what I get, but the information you give me will be much appreciated. Thanks for the great shows. So I'll go first. At the moment, my laptop is an X1 Carbon. It's the Gen 4, I think, which is the current model. Yeah, Lenovo. Sorry. I have a souped up one with the NVMe disk. All that stuff works. 3K monitor. All that stuff works. So using TrueOS, I'm using the Matt Macy's new work. So we have a mode setting driver now. You can use an Intel driver. We have all the hardware acceleration still off just because some graphic corruption issues. But for a laptop and for a workstation, it works fine. Even videos are still smooth, running in full screen and stuff. So that's not really so much of an issue. But that's currently what I'm rocking. I used to have a T520, a Lenovo as well, and that worked great. It had an NVIDIA card in it. What's your
so I have a T530, which is basically one generation newer of your T520. So it's the Ivy Bridge one, which is the latest one that had the full support in FreeBSD 10.3 without the newer graphics work. But now I can get a newer one if I want. And then I also have a pair of X220s, Lenovo X220s that I got off eBay for $200 a piece. So I mostly just use those for testing, but they're much smaller than my giant. I have the T530 I have
that boat anchor
is like a 17-inch, and I've got a second battery in it, so I can go an entire conference day without having to plug in. Because depending on the conference, sometimes there's not power at every seat, and I love the freedom of being able to just run the entire day, even if I'm doing a build world and not run out of battery.
You know, my X1, I can get like 6 hours battery life.
If you're building world, I don't think so.
No, while I'm doing stuff, like actually using it heavy, like VM.
Right. Well, just using it, and then there's build world minus J number of cores, right? Well, but yes.
True, but I mean that's pretty good for a lightweight laptop.
I didn't really understand it until I picked up John Hickson's X1 Carbon, and I was like, oh my, that is light.
Yeah, he's got the same one I got.
Maybe I'm gonna have to get me one of those.
Yeah, so he's got the same one with the NVMe disk in it, which is awesome. So when I do everything in Git, so like when I pull down this stuff from GitHub for the FreeBSD tree, it's like, and we're splitting the bits on the disk, and it's like done, right? It's just fast. So very nice.
Yep.
There.
So yeah. And then I know George O'Neill has a X260, which is the latest Ivy Bridge, or sorry, Skylake X220 version, or the X, the form factor of an X220, but with the newest processor and everything. And I think with TrueOS that all the software or hardware supported. You have suspend and resume and everything on your X1?
The suspend and resume does not work on mine. That is not supported. The things that do work are like the webcam, the sound, Wi-Fi, of course, is flawless. Matter of fact, ironically, I have a dual boot with Windows. The Wi-Fi on Windows sucks compared to the driver in TrueOS. I've had it drop and all kinds of problems, and it's like, it just works here.
On my T530, everything works, including suspend resume. That's actually running TrueOS now, but it worked fine under regular FreeBSD as well without the newer graphic stuff because it was the last generation that had the older driver. So,
basically, we're saying get a Lenovo of some type, and you'll probably be at least in the ballpark.
Yes, most of it's common enough that it's workable, and it's definitely the best supported platform. Although at EuroBSDCon in the Hacker Lounge one day, I helped somebody set up an Acer. I don't know the model number and stuff though, but I was like, all right, here's a USB stick with TrueOS, and we got it working, and then we had to futz around a little bit to get his touchpad to work because it was a non-synaptic one or something. But
oh, really?
It was like a loader.conf setting, and then everything worked fine. Although he did notice cool. When we were watching the videos, without the acceleration, sometimes with fast motion, there's a tiny bit of tearing, but definitely doesn't make it unwatchable. Because I used my TrueOS machine to watch Brian Cantrell's video from HashiConf, his talk from HashiConf on the flight over to Europe. because I needed something to watch until they served dinner, so that I could go to sleep after dinner.
Sure. And that worked fine?
It worked. Yes, I was very happy with that.
Fantastic. Well, we've done a lot of work at TrueOS too. A lot of us are using high DPI displays now. Like I got dual 4Ks, and the laptop I have is like a 3K is what they call it. But we've done a lot of work like with the UI scaling. So Lumina now UI scales properly, and it does the settings for web browsers, and you can set the DPI at the login manager now. So you can even get like a good size there. So it's pretty cool. Anyway, give it a whirl. If you find one that works really well and you're happy with, write us back so we can share that with others. Okay, and it's time to close out the show this week, folks. So, of course, let's remind you, send comments, questions, show ideas, topics. If you have a story, anything that you see like, hey, that should be on a future episode, send that to feedback@bsdnow.tv. That's the only place we monitor, and we may not reply to it right away, if at all. We a lot of times sit on stuff and wait to talk about it here live on the show. So send that on over, and we'll try and get that worked into a future episode. I think we still have quite a backlog of email, though. I was looking through it last night when I was getting this week set up. So
more email
if it takes a while, I apologize. Yeah, more email doesn't hurt. It's good to have a little bit of a cushion of stuff to put in the future episode. So keep sending it on in, and we appreciate that. And we'll be back same time next week. I don't think you have anywhere to go till Meet BSD.
I'm good till Meet BSD, so we should have our regular series of episodes. Although we're still desperate for interviews. So if you know someone and you can twist their arm or prod them or kick them in the shins or whatever it takes to get them to do an interview, that'd be great. Also, remember, if you need your BSD Now die cut sticker, for your laptop or whatever, it's jupiterbroadcasting.com/stickers. And don't forget to register for Meet BSD. I look forward to seeing you there.
That's right. So we'll see you then. Look forward to talking to you again next week.